Welcome to our webinar, Estate Planning Part 2, having that honest conversation with your loved ones about your wishes. Welcome, Patelco members and friends. Next slide. First things first, I want to show this disclosure on what we call sometimes the not may. Next slide. In short, investment products are not FDIC or NCUA insured. They are not guaranteed by the credit union and may lose value. Next slide. Before we get started with the main presentation, let's go over a few housekeeping items. All participants will be in listen-only mode. There is a lot of heavy content tonight, but we want you to sit back and relax. That's why this webinar is being recorded and the replay will be sent out to you in about 2 days. Our main speaker, Frank Pallaro, will present for about 30 minutes, after which we will begin the Q&A session. You are encouraged to type in your questions in the Q&A section as you think of them, and at any time during the presentation. Please use the Q&A instead of the chat so we can keep an eye on those important questions. Also, at the end of the webinar, we will show you our digital solution for estate planning for those do-it-yourself people, as well as an investment promotion where you can invest $25,000 or more and receive a $100 Amazon e-gift card. 2 weeks ago, we hosted a webinar titled Estate Planning Part 1, The Basics. We learned a lot about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and many other things. You can find the replay of Part 1 on our website, patelco.org, under Financial Wellness tab. Tonight, we have Estate Planning Part 2, which is a deep dive on having that honest conversation with your loved ones about your wishes. We're going to explore identifying caretakers for loved ones, creating and storing important documents, selecting decision makers, and setting up account access. Our partner for tonight's webinar is Equitable. We work closely with Equitable, and tonight they have brought us some unique content for this webinar. Let me read about our speaker, Frank Pallaro. Frank has been in the industry for 23 years and 19 years with Equitable. He grew up in New Jersey, is one of 4 children, and his parents were both inner city school teachers. On Frank's bucket list is to drive the Autobahn, attend the Super Bowl with the Giants playing, and bring his 2 daughters to see all 62 national parks. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Frank to start the presentation.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for having me on. And I don't know if those Giants are going to make the Super Bowl this year, but I sure hope to see the Niners in there because they're looking really good. So, thank you for that. Thank you, everyone, for having me on the call today. It's an amazing presentation. It's one of my favorite ones that I give all year because it really is something that's important to me. Me being an insurance specialist and being in the industry so long, meeting with people, talking to them about their needs and what's important to them. As we progress through that process, we find that less and less people actually have a plan in place. And we know why. It's a tough thing to do. Putting a plan in place to pass assets on from one generation to another, it's very, very tough. But there are some things that we do need to talk about and address, because at the end of the day, having that discussion with your family is going to bring everyone together. And what I hope to do today in this presentation is to just give you a few ideas, just a few ideas to help you get organized, to help you get situated. And if you haven't spoken to an estate planner yet, I really do hope this starts that conversation, because it can be very intimidating talking about passing assets on and gathering information. So I'm going to make it easy. We're going to make it consultative. If you have any questions, just put it in the chat and we'll discuss it at the end. And I'm also going to go through this brochure. It's the Share Your Love discussion guide. I have it on PDF. I have it on hard copy. And it's important to have one of these filled out because I like to say, this is where you put all your finances in one place. It's a way for you to sit down with your loved ones and get organized. And the reason why I have one of these brochures for myself is because my wife, Jamie, been married to her for about 13 years, and I have a little daughter named Carly, she's 8 years old, and a little daughter named Reagan, she's 4. But Jamie knows that if anything happens to me and I go to work and I don't come home one day, that she goes into the safe and she pulls out that Share Your Love guide and she has a step-by-step plan. She has a plan in place. She knows who to pay bills to. She has an monthly expense bill in there, expenses in there. She knows who the financial advisor is, where the will is. She has all the information. And at a time of need, that's really, really important. So as I go through this presentation, think about ways that we can make it easy for you to put all your finances in one place and to get organized, because that's really the goal of tonight. So the agenda tonight is 3 things. The first thing is we're going to talk about the importance of an estate plan. The second thing is we're going to talk about the Share Your Love discussion guide. And the third one we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you do after you complete the brochure. Where do you put it? So what's the importance of an estate plan? A lot of people say, I don't need an estate plan. I don't have a lot in assets. I don't really have that much to pass on. Or maybe some people say, I don't feel comfortable discussing my finances with my children. I just don't think that's something that I want to do right now. I will say this. There's a big importance of an estate plan. The most important thing is my father about a year ago came down with ALS. And it was a traumatizing time for me and my family. If anyone out there has ever had ALS, about 60% of the people that have ALS pass away within the first 3 years. And he's about 1.5 years into this. And I remember the first time when he got diagnosed, he comes back to my mother and I, and he's there, he's pale white, he's shaking. And he goes, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And he's 78 years old. And I'm like, well, what do you need? What do you need time for? He goes, I just don't have enough time. And he was overwhelmed. He didn't know where to begin. It was an emotional time for our family. We came together. And me being a planner, we already had an estate plan put together for him. But can you imagine being in that situation when something tragic happens in your life and that timeline gets really compressed and you just don't have enough time? So having a really good estate plan is important because you can control the distribution of your assets. You have them, they're going to go to who you want them to go to. We're also going to prepare ahead. And then also you're going to protect your family members. And you're going to protect your family members from, if anything happens, they have and know where all the finances are. And that's the most important thing. The biggest takeaway I took from that when my father was diagnosed was he didn't have enough time. And when you're in that situation, we all have people that we love. And we really know that it's important. A lot of people, we talk about this last decade. It's really important to have a good financial plan in place. So there's 2 most important parts about estate planning that we're going to talk about today. The first thing is, we're going to talk about completing all the necessary documents. And that's important because you want to make sure all your necessary documents are completed, and we'll go over the necessary documents. And then we'll also talk about the difficult conversation that you're going to have with your loved ones. How do you address it? And how do you sit down with them and really bring up those conversations about an estate plan? Anyone here know who Prince was? Prince, it was an amazing story of Prince, fabulous artist, been around for a long time. His estate was about $300 million. Never had an estate plan. In fact, when Prince passed away, his whole estate went into arbitration in the courts. And the most amazing thing was that people came out of nowhere saying that, Prince is my father, family feud was happening, they were fighting over the assets. An inmate actually came out and said that Prince is my legal father and was actually suing the estate for a piece of those assets. So a good estate plan really does help to address the family conflict. We all have people out there that we know, mother and father passes away, Next thing you know, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins are fighting over the assets. You know, my aunt just passed away about probably 5 months ago, and she was my godmother, very, very close to me, like a second mother to me. And when she passed away, I was the executor of her estate. And she didn't have a tremendous amount of money. She was a teacher for years. She was a saver. She had a 403, she had a 401k that she had put money away for. She had a pension, she had some life insurance. But at the end of the day, when she passed away, the first thing people asked me was, did Aunt Concetta leave me anything? So having a good plan and having an executor that you trust is going to really help with that family conflict. Also, next thing, we're going to facilitate distribution of assets to your estate. I don't know if anyone here has ever been the executor of a estate, but in New Jersey, where my aunt was, she had about 9 months to distribute those assets. We're currently distributing them right now. And I'll tell you this, the first 4 months of being an executor is a pain in the butt. I mean, you're going through and dealing with the state, and you're dealing with different financial institutions and trying to gather assets together. I'm very fortunate that my aunt let me about 10 years ago sit down with her and consolidate all her assets. She had about 5 or 6 different banks. We consolidated it all down to one credit union. So she had one checking account, one savings account, and it was really easy to distribute those assets. And then finally, ensuring that you're maximizing the distribution according to your wishes. You know, you lived your whole life gathering assets, growing wealth. And at the end of the day, you don't want your family torn apart fighting over those assets. And you want your assets to go to who you want them to go to and passed on the way that you want them to be passed on. And that's everything that an estate plan does. Anyone ever hear of Florence Griffin Joyce? She was an Olympic gold medaler. Amazing, because she had an Olympic gold medal. She had a great plan put together. But at the end of the day, she had passed away when she was about 38 years old. And they couldn't locate the documents. They couldn't find the will. They couldn't find the estate plan. And it took decades, it took years and years and years of the family going to battle with the courts over those assets. So when you do the family love discussion, one of the most important things we're going to do is document where you put your assets, and also where you put the documentation. Where is the will? Where is the estate plan? Because what that's going to do is it's going to provide confidence that your assets will be distributed according to your wishes. It's also going to promote an honest and productive conversation with your loved ones about your wishes. And it's also going to ensure that your loved ones know your wishes were carried out according to the way you want them to be carried out. So what's the purpose of the Share Your Love discussion? I always say it's going to put your mind at ease. Just like my father, when he was diagnosed with ALS and he said he didn't have enough time. Can you imagine not having a financial plan? Knowing that 60% of people with ALS pass within the first 3 years, and you have to put together a plan in that state of mind. You want to be prepared just in case anything happens, right? Discussing and writing down your plan with your loved ones to ensure nothing is unknown. Making sure that all the documents are in the correct places and ensuring that your wishes are carried out. You know, I did my estate plan, and I also did that Share Your Love brochure, and I keep it in my safe at home. And I can't tell you, when we finally filled it out with my wife, Jamie, it was a sigh of relief. She felt like she just knew that if anything happened, she'd know where all the assets were and she'd be able to take care of our 2 daughters, which is important to her, also important to me. So there's some content that we're going to go over with the Share Your Love and brochure and how to keep it streamlined. So there's a couple of sections. The first section is the key contact in the advisory section. And I'm going to go over the brochure with you. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go through these pieces, these parts of the brochure, and then I have the brochure on PDF and I'll pull it up and I'll go through the different sections that I think are important, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of important pieces that you're going to want to fill out. The brochure is pretty thick. It's about 30 or 40 pages, but I will say this, you don't have to fill out the whole brochure. If you're a veteran, you want to fill out the section for veterans. If you're not a veteran, you don't have to do that. You could bypass those sections, and there's different sections in here. So when we first filled it out, my wife, Jamie, and I, we sat down, and I will say this, it took us a little bit of time, Okay, it took us about 4 weeks. Every Saturday, we sat down for a little bit with a glass of wine. So 4 weeks, 4 bottles of wine. We sat down, we went through the brochure. First thing we did was we highlighted the important features, the parts that we thought were important to us. Second week we went through, we started filling it out little by little. And then by the 4th week, we were completely done and we felt really good about it. But one of the most important sections that you want to fill out is the key contact and advisor section. And what I do is this. Not only do you want to fill out this information, you want to fill out who your financial advisor is, where your doctors are located, key contacts, who do you call in case of an emergency? How about all the digital passwords? You know, we have so many passwords in our lives, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you pull up your iPhone and you go to the settings menu, there's a spot in there and it shows all your different passwords that you can have and you can pull up. Write them down. And when you do your Share Your Love discussion brochure, make sure that the important things are in pen. You're not going to change your spouse. You're not going to change, important contacts. You can write that in pen if you want, but the passwords and the digital assets, I always write that down in pencil because I feel like we always change our passwords so much that every now and then you want to go back into that brochure once a year, every 6 months, just erase it, fill in the most important things. And what this is going to do is my wife, Jamie, knows that if anything happens to me, she opens up the brochure to page 1. The first person she calls, our financial advisor, my cousin Chris. The second person she calls, right? Life insurance. She makes sure that she takes the life insurance paperwork out of the safe. She calls her life insurance person. She has those assets ready to go. And she has all the important documents. She has the digital passwords. She has our bank account. She can get online. She can do auto bill pay. She knows where everything is. And that's really important to her. It keeps her at a peace of mind. The next section is financial information and assets. Now, how many people out there have introduced their beneficiaries to their financial advisor? I think when you introduce your beneficiaries to your financial advisor, and you don't have to necessarily say, here's my financial advisor, he's going to tell you everything we have, but make that connection. Introduce your beneficiaries to your financial advisor, because if anything happens to you, your beneficiary is going to go to your financial advisor, and there's going to be a list of all your financial assets. If you have a good financial plan, or if you fill this out in the Share Your Love brochure, you're going to have a list of all your investment assets, the 401ks, your Social Security, the benefits, any debt that you owe, different bank accounts. Like I said to my aunt, we kept all the bank accounts. She had 3 or 4 different bank accounts. We consolidated everything into just one bank account in a credit union. It was great because when she had passed, I had access to all the funds. I could pay off all her debt, and it was coming out of one account. I didn't have to consolidate. Personal property and real estate, list of all your assets in your real estate. Liabilities. Do we have a loan? Do we have a HELOC? Do we have student debt? Do we borrow money from anyone that we need to pay back? In addition to that, credit cards. List your credit cards in your Share Your Love discussion guide. How many credit cards do you have? Do you have mileage points? Did anyone here know that you can actually pass on your mileage points if anything happens to you to immediate spouse? Mileage points. How many credit cards do we have? How do we pay those bills? Do we pay them online? Do we mail a check in? That way we could settle all disputes if we have to. The financial information and asset page is probably one of the most important pages because it tells someone where all the important documentation is and where all your financial assets are. So not only do we have to have different types of life insurance, different types of benefits, employer benefits, how they're paid, the insurance section of the brochure is one of the most important ones to me because years ago I did this seminar and we did it out in Oakland, California, and we had about 120 people there. And afterwards, the financial advisor got up and says, "Hey, would anyone like to say a couple words or have any questions on this?" And a woman stood up and she says, "Frank, great information. I want to share a personal story with you." She goes, "Years ago, my mother had passed away and she was sick and she was on hospice. And it was just a rough time for me and my brother. And we paid all these medical expenses. And it was about $120,000 worth of medical expenses that we paid over the last year. And when she passed away, we had gone through all of her stuff and we were going through her bedroom and we were going through her night table drawer, and we saw keys to a safety deposit box. And she goes, we went to the bank and we had the information and we opened up the safety deposit box. And what was in there was a disability policy. It was a disability policy that my father had bought her years ago in case anything should happen to her. And we never got to use it. We never got to use that disability policy because we never knew that that policy even existed. My father had passed away years ago. My mother wasn't feeling well for a while, and we never got a chance to use that policy. And like everyone else out there, you know, if you've ever been to a bank, there are hundreds of safety deposit boxes. And every month they drill those boxes because no one knows what's in those boxes. They never know. And when you go into those boxes, she went into those boxes and what was in there was a disability policy that they could have used. So the most important thing that you want to do when you fill out the insurance benefits section of the Share Your Love brochure, it's really important that you're going to document where the benefits and the policies are. I like to personally keep all my policies, whether it's life insurance, whether it's disability, auto insurance, all my policies in one place. I keep in a filing cabinet. And then as I write out my Share Your Love discussion guide, next to life insurance, I put the policy number, I put the carrier's name, what insurance company it is, and then I put the location of the documents. That way Jamie knows that if anything happens to me, she takes that brochure, she opens it up, she sees life insurance, and she goes right into the filing cabinet and she can take out the physical document and the physical policies. And being in the insurance industry, we see this all the time. People pass away and then a year or 2 years later, we get death claims because it's not easy to go through all the documents all at once when someone passes away. You mourn. Sometimes it takes months to go through storage units, to go through someone's house, to go through drawers. My aunt passed away 5 months ago and we haven't even made it into her storage unit yet. That's something that we're going to do next summer. I can only imagine what we have for us in there. Documentation and information. So these are some of the important documentations that are going to be associated with an estate plan. An estate plan is made up of a couple of important documents. You have the estate plan, deeds and titles, family forms, benefits, tax returns, monthly expenses. These are everything that you're going to list in the Share Your Love discussion guide. One of the biggest things I take away from that is if you go down under family forms, list where you keep the marriage license, birth certificates, adoption papers, citizenship papers. You can list all this information, including the monthly budget, inside that brochure. So what is an estate plan and what are the documents? Well, an estate plan is a really great tool. It's used to plan ahead. It consists of a will, property and disposal list, living will, medical power of attorney, durable power of attorney, and an ethical will. Now, we are not estate planners and we can't suggest the estate planning information, but I am going to talk about some of the different forms that are included in an estate plan. So first of all, what is a will? Will is easy. It's a legal document that designates your executor and directs how assets should be passed along. The first thing that happened was when my wife and I were on vacation one time, when we first had our first baby, we were going to go on vacation. And she said, I am not going on vacation until we have a will, because if anything should happen, I want to make sure that Carly is taken care of. So we did a will. We did a will. The second list is the personal property and disposal list. And this is where you're really going to put all your important information. This is where we all have information and we all have family heirlooms and things that are important to us. I go back to the East Coast every Christmas and my mom has this really great Christmas china. It's china that we've used throughout the years. We've eaten off of it for decades. We sit at the kitchen table. She would make us breakfast in the morning during Christmas time. It was a big thing for her in our house. And she always says, she's been collecting this china for probably 4 decades already, adding on different pieces. And she always says, one day when I pass away, she goes, I can't wait for you and your brother to inherit this Christmas china and create memories with your family. And it's nice, but this is where we put all the personal property list. So we have family members that don't fight over mom's wedding ring, dad's watches, the Christmas china, artwork, anything that's of importance that you want to pass on to your family, and who receives it goes in a personal property disposal list. The next thing is we have the living will. And what is the living will? It's a written statement that's expressing your desires regarding medical treatment, if anything, if you should no longer be able to take care of yourself. And what this does is it takes the emotional burden out of your family. I mentioned my aunt passed away, and she had passed away of sepsis. She was sick for a while in a nursing home, and she had a living will, and she wanted to pass. She didn't want to have any kind of assistance. And that was really good because at that time, I don't think my mother was willing to lose her sister or have to make that decision. It's a very tough decision to make. And I know a lot of people out there have probably been through that or have been in that situation. And you could speak about how hard that is. It's a tough decision. Medical power of attorney grants someone the power to make medical decisions if you should become incapacitated. And then the durable power of attorney gives the authority of a trusted friend or relative to manage assets if you are unable to do so. So who's going to be able to manage your assets, file your taxes, pay your bills, if you are no longer able to do so? And then arrangements. A good plan has the funeral arrangements at the end. It was a blessing that when my aunt passed away, she had everything set up. Life insurance paid for everything. We knew exactly where everything was. The plan was in place. And what we did at that point was we spent the time mourning her without stress. And it was a huge, huge burden off our shoulders. Ethical and family history. We like to define our legacy. So a lot of times when you do an estate plan, and especially when you do the Share Your Love brochure, in the back of it, there's going to be a spot that you can talk about your ethical and family history, right? Define your legacy. As a father, what's important to me? The most important things I did in my life were the opportunities and the stories and the values that you can pass down to your family. So just imagine this, something happens to you and you have this Share Your Love brochure, and your daughter, your son, a loved one takes it and looks through it. Great. They know where all the financial information is. They have all the passwords to all the accounts. They know where all the documentation is for life insurance, for the 401k assets. They know who the financial advisor is. And then they turn to the end of the brochure and they see something written from you. And it says, in my life, the most important thing I gave was blank. The people I love the most are. And it's something that you can write in there that really leaves something, and it leaves closure to your family in a time of distress. After completion, where do you put it? Easy. First thing you have to do is you have to tell someone where it is. So I keep 2 copies. The first copy is the hard copy. I keep that copy in my safe, and my wife knows where it is, and my brother is my contingent beneficiary. He's also going to be the person that's going to be able to take care of my daughters if anything should happen to me, and my wife at the same time. So it's important that at the end of the day, he knows that combination is safe and he knows where to pull up that information. Now, here's something else that's important. We have a PDF version, which I love the PDF version. The problem with the PDF version is if anything happens to you, your beneficiaries might not be able to go onto your computer to get it. So what I do is I have a PDF version. I keep it on my computer. I can fill it out. I can update it. I can type on it. It's fillable. I print it up. I put it in my safe. And then every year I update that about once a year. My wife and I sit down, Jamie and I sit down. We go through it. We talk about what's really important. We make any changes to passwords. If there's any insurance changes, we update all the information. We print it out. And we stick it back in the safe. And what that does is it's easy because now I don't have to rewrite over that piece. I don't have to erase. I keep 1 copy. And it's a great way to do it. So the Share Your Love guide, this is what it looks like. It comes in paper copy and PDF, and it's available through your financial advisor at Patelco. In addition to that, I think Carolyn or Chris is going to put the link up. So if you want to download it in the link, you can pull it up and you can look through it. But I'm going to go through it real quick. And I'm going to show you a couple of sections that I really like that I think are important. So let me just pull this up real quick. It looks like this. Okay, and as we go through, we're going to go through the different pages and share your love. And like I said, it's a blueprint rooted in courage, strength, and wisdom. So all the information that you need, there's a table of contents that's involved. So right here is, and it's fillable. So you can type it out, you can put in all the information. This is the key contact and advisor section. Remember we talked about that? So your spouse's name goes in here, all your key contacts in case there's an emergency, and phone numbers and access codes. So I like to put any important information or access codes, like the Wi-Fi code, an alarm code, any kind of valuable information might be in there. Next, they come down to passwords. And you're going to have a lot of passwords. You might use a couple of them, you may not. The biggest takeaway is, what if something happened to me and my kids didn't have the passcode to Disney Plus? It would be all over. No more Elsa, they'd go crazy, joke, but it's great. You can put all your passcodes here, all the information goes here, user ID, passcodes. We go a little bit further. You get important phone numbers. This is where you start to put, including social security numbers, any information, your financial advisor, all your financial information, what type of advisor. We have insurance advisors, we have financial advisors. You have your banker at the local credit union you can put in there, the name and the phone numbers, medical doctors, your pharmacy. Like I said, there's a lot of information here. You might not want to fill it all out. It is about 32 pages up on the top. I'm only on page 7. I'm only going to go over a couple that I really like. As we go down, here's your assets. Here's any kind of stocks, bank accounts, custodial accounts you might have, real estate. There's that personal property list. That's where you're going to put mom's Christmas china. Reward programs. We talked a little bit about, are we going to pass on rewards points, frequent flyer points, American Express points, Visa points, Marriott points, whatever they might be. Here's where you're going to put in other assets, digital assets. And there's the one for the safety deposit box. Probably one of the most important ones. Like I said, in the banks and the credit unions, we drill safety deposit boxes all the time. They're drilled weekly and they're opened up and no one knows what's in them. How many people out there have a storage unit? If anything should happen to you, who's in charge of cleaning that storage unit out? I have a safe, personal safe. Where is it located? What's the combination? Okay. I'm going to skip through and just do a little bit more. There's liabilities, there's credit cards, but I want to go through this part because I really do think it's important. We're going to get to the insurance benefits. And this is what I was talking about before with that fine woman whose mother passed away and they finally found the disability policy later. But that's where the carrier information goes, the policy, the benefit amount, the primary beneficiary, and then what happens if I'm disabled. All the information goes in here. You might also have other coverage. So life insurance, and then disability, long-term care, dental, vision, any other kind of insurance that you might have, including homeowners insurance or employee benefits. And then we discussed this before. If you're a veteran, here's where you put that information in. And then the important documents. What important documents do you have? Like that gold medal winner who took all the time to put together an estate plan, but they couldn't find the documentation. They didn't know where the actual estate plan, the hard copies were. Where's the will? Where's the trust? Where's the durable power of attorney? This is where you list those documents. And also you put the location right here, the location of the documents. Accounts, deeds, and titles. Family forms. I'm going to skip ahead. I think everyone understands how this is laid out, but this is the part that I really like as I keep on going through. Funeral arrangements. The ethical will. After your loved ones receive this packet and they look through it and they feel like they understand in a time of need where what has to be done and where those assets are, they're going to open this up to page 25 and they're going to start reading this and they're going to hear from you. And what they're going to see is an ethical will. And the first question is, the most important things in my life are, and I'll tell you right now, the most important things in my life are my wife and my 2 little girls. And the next thing is, I'm most grateful for my wife and my 2 little girls. And the most important things in my life, and I like heirs to inherit, and it keeps on going down. And it's just, I feel that we've done a really great job as an organization in the insurance world to not only talk about the benefits of being organized and having a financial plan, but also understanding in a time of grief how important it is for your loved ones to hear from you one last time and to really hear what mattered to you and what you're proud of. So this is an amazing document. We can go through it a little bit more. I love this part about your family. If you want to put a little bit about your heritage, mother's maiden name, father's maiden name, brothers and sisters, how many children there are. This is a little bit of a family tree. And then it wraps it all up at the end. And it's a great piece for you just to sit down with a loved one and go through it and get organized. Because at the end of the day, there's so many people out there that they just don't know where to start. They don't know how to begin that conversation. It's overwhelming to them. They don't want to think about the end. But like my father, who has ALS, the first thing he did when he came home was he said, I don't have enough time. And when you're in that moment and you're faced with tragedy, time is everything, and being prepared is just going to help you with that emotional burden. So I'm going to say thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me today. And Chris, at this point, if we have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you, Frank. Such valuable information. We'll get started in a minute on the Q&A. We realize the link to the guide is currently broken, so we'll send it out to you all along with the replay in a few days. So apologies for that, but we will get it out to you in digital format. So let's get to the Q&A, Frank. So a couple here have come in through the time you were chatting. So the first one is, what is the difference between estate planning and having a living trust?
Yeah, we're not estate planners, and we don't talk about the estate plan and how to do it. I'm going to say that the most important thing is the estate plan is the whole plan. It's everything. It encompasses everything. It encompasses all the parts of the plan. The trust is just one piece. So what I would do is I would sit down with an estate planner and really talk about the differences. Me not being a licensed estate planner, I really can't speak on the differences and what they are. So.
Thanks, Frank. Here's another one. Is there a fee to manage and or fund a trust?
Chris, isn't there a service through Patelco to do a trust?
We do, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Do it yourself, but also from our estate planning part one, our guest speaker was estate planning attorney Ed Kanglet, which his contact information was listed on the replay of that. So for sure, for more detailed questions about estate plan, we do have a solution.
Yeah, usually there is a fee that's associated with an estate plan or a trust. They vary, and now you can do a trust very, very inexpensively. There's a number of different resources that you can do, including online, where you can do them very inexpensively.
All right, next one. This one will hit home since you're an executor for your aunt's estate. Question is, how much time is needed by an executor? How do I make my friends agree on this if they have full-time jobs?
Well, that's a very good question. I'll tell you this. I mean, I can only speak because I've been the executor in the state of New Jersey, and it was a lot of time. But it was scattered. It wasn't like you're working 8 hours a day to sell this estate. You get a certificate from the court, and it gets notarized, and you send it into the state, and you get access to the accounts, and then you put all the accounts together. What I really took away from this was, if I was the executor of an estate, which I am, and I didn't have help, it would have been a lot harder. So what I mean by that is, my aunt passed away. My cousin's a financial advisor, and he manages all my aunt's assets. So we have a great rapport. And that's why I say every beneficiary should know their financial advisor, because my cousin has access to the accounts. I'm the executor. And I have another cousin who's an attorney. So he was able to file all the paperwork with the state. So all I had to do was I send everything over to my cousin James, and I said, James, we have to settle Aunt Concetta's estate. I want to pay you a fee out of the estate. So make sure that you have a lawyer that you work with that can distribute assets and help push through that process. Because it's not easy. You don't just get an estate and you're not just an executor and you don't just say, okay, here I am. You have to present paperwork, you have to file it with the state, you have to become a surrogate, and then you take over the assets, you take over the accounts, you got to put the accounts in your name. So having a team together was the most important thing. It didn't take too long, maybe a total of 10 hours at the most. And like I said, my aunt didn't have a tremendous amount of assets. She had a brokerage account, she had a bank account, she had a retirement account, she had life insurance. The biggest thing was, if we didn't consolidate all those assets into one account, it would have been an absolute nightmare for me as an executor to go to all these different financial institutions and consolidate everything into one estate account to pay out all of her debt. Because when she passed away, she had about $57,000 in hospital bills that I had to pay out. And then on top of it, she had a house, which we had to sell and liquidate. And those assets got split between my mother and my uncle, and I had to distribute those. So it didn't take too long, a total of 10 hours, but we were really organized. I have a family of financial professionals and lawyers, and my mom's a teacher, my dad's a teacher. So they're all into planning, so I would say this, that's the reason why we do these presentations, is because start thinking now of how to get organized. You don't need 5 or 6 different banks. You're good with one just credit union and a couple of accounts and a really good financial advisor that can put together your team, build your team. That's the most important thing.
Thanks, Frank. Next one, is it a good idea to have a safe deposit box or keep the records myself?
I'll speak from personal experience. I do a combination of both. I have a safe in my house and I have a safety deposit box. There's just some things that you just don't want to keep at home. They're too valuable.
Excellent. Do you have a recommendation to write a will?
I think everyone should write a will. It's the way your assets are going to be passed on. It's the most important thing that you need is a will. That's where the whole game begins. And like we said before, there's a lot of ways, very inexpensive ways, that you have access to financial professionals that can help you draft a will.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Next one. How legal is the long form that was just covered versus a notarized document done by an attorney creating a living trust?
Share Your Love discussion guide is not a legal document. It will not hold up in a court of law. It is not a legal document. All it is a reference and a guide for your loved ones and a way for you to feel organized and consolidate your assets in one place.
There's another one. And again, just a disclosure, Frank's not a estate planning attorney. This one says, is there any way to set up a trust where a child would get a set amount of money per month that had to go to living expenses?
Absolutely. You can absolutely do that.
All right, a few more. Who would consolidate the accounts and when should this be done?
I listen to a lot of podcasts about, especially in the medical field, because it's something as I get older, I'm always looking to get healthier, take care of myself, be there for my 2 girls. And they always talk about all these doctors on these podcasts always talk about your last decade. They always say people know when they're in their last decade. You just feel it, right? You see people that are getting older and you think right now, how much longer can I live? But there's this theme of this last decade. And I would say you want to do it before you feel like you're in your last decade. You want to be prepared beforehand. You don't want to be in a situation where if something happens to you and you're in a situation like my father and tragedy hits and you have a 3-year window, he was 76 years old when he got diagnosed. Now he's 77, almost 78. And, you just don't want to be in that situation where you have to consolidate everything when in your last decade. You should be enjoying your last decade. I mean, I'm 46 years old and I've consolidated all my assets. I have two accounts, right? I have a brokerage account with my cousin and I have a bank account, and that's all I have. I keep two accounts.
All right. Here's another one, Frank. Is it ever advisable to select co-executors?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a co-executor. I don't know if we need two people. I mean, I think that would be personal preference or something that you want to talk to an estate planner, but I feel like one competent person to distribute the asset. I feel personally, after going through this process, I wouldn't want to make those decisions with someone else. I think the executor is a person that is a non-biased person that distributes assets. So not only am I the executor of my aunt's estate and I distributed it, that was very tough because it's amongst family. I'm also the executor of a really good friend who said, I want someone that my kids don't know. I don't want them talking about what I have. I just want someone that just pays it out according to the way I paid it out. So I'm also the executor of his trust. And I barely know his children.
Thanks, Frank. Regarding the guide we talked about tonight, question is, should I have one for me and one for my husband, or should we combine our information into one document?
I think that's personal preference. My wife and I consolidated, we file under one tax ID number. We're a joint family. We don't commingle we commingle all of our assets. So we look at it as, in my family, we look at it as all our assets, one household, one guide. If it's a personal preference that you want to have two guides, that's fine. Maybe we have people out there that this is their second marriage and they want to keep some assets apart from each other. That's fine. I think that's personal preference. But I think the most important thing is that you start to open up those conversations. You start to think about the planning process, start to consolidate your accounts, clean up your financial balance sheet. It's the most important thing.
All right, Frank. I do want to apologize. We can't get to every question tonight. So thanks for submitting those. We're going to move on to the next part of the presentation. So next slide, Frank. At the start of the webinar, we talked about a digital estate planning solution for the do-it-yourselfers. If that interests you, here's the information. 100% online with easy step-by-step instructions. Expert help is available by chat, email, or phone. It's built by attorneys and customized by you to fit your needs. Completed in little as 30 minutes. You can save 25% off an estate plan, $449 for a trust, $119 for a will. trustandwill.com/Patelco. We'll also drop the link in the chat to find the page on patelco.org, or you can scan the QR code on the slide below. Next slide. As Frank mentioned throughout the presentation, most people will need advice when investing. We have 11 financial advisors at Patelco available to help you make those decisions. They can help you with tax-free income, retirement planning and retirement income, 401ks and IRA rollovers, financial planning, life insurance, long-term care, and wealth transfer. They are available to meet with you in person, over the phone, via Zoom, and our financial advisors have encrypted version of Zoom for added online protection. We'll drop a link in the chat to help you locate a financial advisor assigned to your local branch to set up an appointment. Or you can contact me either by phone or email, and we'll get you to a financial advisor in your area. If you contact me directly, please let me know what branch is most convenient for you. Next slide. And now let's talk about the promotion. It's simple. Through December 31st of this year, you can get a $100 Amazon e-gift card when you invest $25,000 or more with us. So click on those links in the chat to get an appointment scheduled. Next slide. For our next webinars, we have a holiday focus for the last 2 webinars of the year. On Wednesday, November 8th at 5:30, ways to give this holiday season. And on Wednesday, December 6th at 5:30, financial resilience during the holiday season. These webinars will be hosted by Veronica Dangerfield, our senior financial educator. Please take a photo of the QR code on the screen to register for either one of these webinars. Last slide. Lastly, on behalf of Frank, myself, and the entire Patelco team, we thank you for attending tonight's webinar. Please check our website and join us for future webinars. And remember, wherever you are in your financial journey, Patelco is here for you. Thank you and good night.